Chennai, Sachin. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Pleasure is mine.
So, next year is going to be 20 years in politics. It looks amazing because you're like a kid in politics. And 20 years already almost.
Yeah, it'll be 22 years next year. So
22 years.
I joined.
I was going by the first election that you won.
Yes, but I started working in the party 2 years before I joined. So 2002 was when I officially joined the Congress party. And you're right. And thank you for reminding me that it's 22 years now next year.
Yeah. So amazing. What has this time taught you?
20 years seems like a lot of time. But in my own experience, the changes I've seen in our democracy, in our parliament, in the voter profile, in the demographics, and in our country as a whole is actually phenomenal. People don't realize this, but just 20 years ago, where we were, what country we were in, what values, what ethics young people aspired to follow, all that has changed dramatically. And in every profession, there's been a sea change, including yours, whether it's media, business, and I think it holds true even for politics. The way politicians function, the way the voters perceive the politicians, things that we have to do, governance models, social media influence on voting patterns, the campaigning style, the speeches in parliament. In my own experience, when I first entered parliament, we had Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, we had Deve Gowda ji, we have Chandrasekhar ji, and Atal Bihari Vajpayee. All four people in the same house. And it was a different set of individuals at that point who I thought were really adding value to the debates in parliament and to what was being said and what was being told. So all that has changed. I won't say all that has changed is negative, but I won't even say that all the change is positive. I think it depends on how you see it, how you perceive it. But a lot has changed in my own experience. My first election I fought in 2004. And I sometimes watch some of the videos and some of the newspaper articles that came out. It was a different era.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like it, but the more I talk about it, the older I feel. So I'm going to stop talking about it.
No, but it is, isn't it? I mean, if 2014 was the Twitter election, I think 2019 was the WhatsApp election.
Right.
I mean, in 2004, we didn't even know what social media was. So that's what I want to understand from you. How have these changes in technology impacted the way politicians conduct themselves and the way they're perceived? Now, I think a 24/7 politician, you have to be one. I mean, you're on duty all the time.
I think anybody who ever thought that politics was not a 24/7 profession was absolutely wrong. It has been since before.
Certain people may have thought it in your party.
No, not at all. Today, a politician, a policy maker, whether it's a sarpanch, whether it's a councillor, mayor, MLA, MP, whoever he or she may be, in any political party, the time devotion, the commitment, and the presence has to be 24/7. And not only does it have to be, it has to be seen to be 24.
Seen to be 24.
Yes. So some people are masters in perception, and some people actually do the groundwork in reality. But politics as a profession really it's not a job. I think it's more of a lifestyle, and it's who you are, because you can pretend to be something different for a few hours every day. And Kaveri, I say this because a lot of people think that televisions, social media, news channels can actually, create perceptions. Perhaps they can, but I think you can only be who you're not for a few hours a day.
Yeah.
You can't be somebody 24 hours a day. So your true sense, that's why it's best to be honest about who you are, accept who you are, and then people actually appreciate that, as opposed to trying to pretend to be something that you're not. That doesn't work. And I think now with the glare 24/7, social media so penetrative, everyone has an opinion, everybody has 2 mobile phones, so everyone knows exactly what you're doing and what you're saying. The other point I want to make, and I say this to a lot of friends of mine who have young kids, that what you tell your children and all the good things you want them to grow up with, they may listen to you, but they will follow what they see.
Yeah.
So I can keep saying all day all good things to my sons, अच्छे इंसान बनो, अच्छे काम करो. But if I'm doing the opposite, that's what they'll pick up. So what you say is perhaps not as important as what you actually do on the ground, and what people see you do. And you can't fudge that. You can't fake it for much long. So therefore, I think that transparency has come in because of the tremendous penetration of the media and social media, but it also has negative effects because now there's so much propaganda, falsehood, negativity, character assassination, videos and audios that are morphed. So people tend to get confused, especially in the rural parts of India where people believe that what you see on your phone is actually
Yeah,
the truth, right?
exactly.
So that is a negative aspect. But as a democracy, as a society, we have to evolve through that. And I think it has to be a moral stand that people take as politicians, as media platforms, to make sure that what we are pushing out into society is going through the filter of some thread of honesty and principles. It can't just be just saying what you want. And what is also a negative impact of the change that I've seen is that the level of discourse has certainly come down. I mean, what people say now to get into the news, people how they say things about their opponents, political opponents, is unhealthy for our democracy. I think that's not the way to be. We can oppose each other, we can disagree with each other, we can severely criticize each other, but it cannot be at a personal level. It cannot be. It can't be something that people don't appreciate. And I keep saying this everywhere I go, that I will never say something about my opponent which I won't want to hear about myself. Right? वो मैं जो किसी के लिए नहीं बोल सकता हूँ, वो मैं अपने लिए कैसे, I mean, that's, so that I think is something that is sadly happening, and we have to all collectively think about how not to give our future generation this sort of example.
You were lucky, Sachin. You had a great role model in your father, and you saw him negotiate tradition with modernity, and he did it beautifully. It was a terrific blend of both. Um, we see that conflict now more and more. You know, the past has come to haunt us in many ways now. History is being discussed. Everything is up for discussion. You know, how do you negotiate that, and how do you tell young people that, okay, this is perhaps what our past was, we accept it and move forward? It doesn't mean that you have to constantly otherize people.
See, other thing I've noticed, Kaveri, is that we spend so much of our time talking about people and individuals who died 70 years ago.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Centuries sometimes.
Sometimes centuries. I mean, what material benefit does the audience get? Do the voters get? If you talk about sanitation, jobs, industry, investment, growth, climate change, things that matter to people's lives, daily lives, inflation, jobs, and we end up talking about things, issues, and individuals who died a century ago, and there is some version of history which I may not agree with, but really, do I spend all my political capital trying to rewrite that history or to convince people otherwise? It is, frankly, personally speaking, I think there's no use. We should really spend our time thinking about the future, what India will be 25 years from now. And you know how quickly time flies. 50 years from now, where will this country be? What will be the job situation? What kind of society will we have? What about our social indices that we
10
have?
years from now. I mean, things are changing so fast.
Yes, but I'm saying a real policy planner will think further
Yeah.
than you expect them to. And I've seen many countries, whether it's Singapore, whether it's Japan, whether it's some Western nations, they actually have plans for 25, 50 years. And for us as policymakers, and I say this collectively, beyond party lines, that we can have differences of opinion, we can win elections, we can form governments, we can be in opposition. We have to maintain a certain quality and standard of discourse, and we have to be able to think of nation first. It can't be about grabbing power. It can't just be about showing your strength and flaunting your muscles and and road rolling every other issue. Because if we keep harping upon defeating and deflating our opponents all the time, we're not really concentrating on governance and issues that matter. So you can make noise, you can occupy people's mind, you can give slogans every 6 months, but unless you make people's lives better, and there's a tangible difference we can make if we really work with that singular point in our minds. But all the time all we're doing is acrimony. There is tensions in society. There is all sorts of negativity. And I mean, I have to say this: the government really, I'm talking about most governments, tend to think that they will stay in power forever, and that's not a good thing. You have to be mindful that there are people who don't agree with you. There are people who are opposing you. Respect them, regard them, take their views on board for national interest. But just to do character assassination, to demean people, to devalue them, to humiliate them, to target them, I think that doesn't speak well for the future of our democracy.
But Sachin, you deal with young people. So many, you must be meeting them all the time. You must be, they must be talking to you about what they want out of life, out of their careers, out of their families. What is the sense you make of them?
Because earlier,
You
Kaveri, I
know,
think earlier people were looking for jobs for sustenance.
yeah.
Then people were looking for lives for better quality of life. You know, they wanted to have a two-wheeler or a car or a good job or a home. And today, a lot of India is aspirational. Now they're
But
looking.
we've always been
No,
aspirational.
not. Our aspirations were limited. Our aspirations were we want to become a doctor, engineer, lawyer, architect. That's about it. Today, the young person in this country is actually thinking of competing globally. That has changed. And what has changed in a person who was a IIT engineer working in NASA 40 years ago was that he had a brilliant mind. He could get up the corporate ladder because of the proficiency, before the intellectual capacities he or she had. But they were not really good at making presentations to 1,000 people. I think a young Indian professor or an intelligent man or woman today not only has the brain power to go through the professional ladder, but also the self-confidence of speaking, addressing, and presenting, because the presentation of skill comes with confidence. If you have confidence in your society, in your country, in your family, it comes out. 40 years ago, I think Indians were as smart as they are today. But today, a young Indian person actually has a lot more confidence, and he or she can take on the world globally. So the competition spirit is much more high. Aspirations earlier were limited to what we knew. What we don't know, we can't aspire for. So today, the world has changed. We're so interconnected. We know what's going on in different parts of the world, whether it's gadgets, whether it's lifestyles, whether it's job satisfaction. So today, it's not about earning more money. It's also about having a quality of life for yourself, contentment, job satisfaction. It's very sad when I see a graduate or a double graduate applying for a clerical job
Yeah.
or a PN's job. So people are then underemployed. So there is unemployment and there's underemployment. It's a huge issue in India, and I say this with all sincerity. It doesn't matter which party is in government in Tamil Nadu, Kerala, India, Rajasthan. Nationally, as a country, we owe it to our next generation to give them a better India than what we received. What we've seen, the transition in the 90s and the 2000 decade has given us something. And I'm very sorry, but when someone says that 2004 to 14,
I was about to say it was a lost decade.
no, I'm saying I completely,
Yeah.
with all humility, I have to completely disagree. 2004 to 14 was a decade where 140 million people were lifted out of abject poverty. That was a decade which saw reverse brain drain. That decade saw investments, Indian economy, it came into its own, and the fruits of which, of course, we're all eating them now. But the foundation of that economy, the liberalized economy, the investments, the job creation, the IT, the communications, the telecom sector. I happen to be a minister in that government in the telecom sector. I know what we did. The broadband connectivity to panchayats, 2.5 lakh panchayats were connected. That time started off. So fiber optic cable laying, IT companies, telecom companies, computer innovations, artificial intelligence, all of that started then. And look at the growth rates. It's simple arithmetic. The growth rate in those 10 years compared to these 10 years, of course, you can say there was COVID and there's, Ukraine war and all sorts of things, but those 10 years, it's wrong to say they were a lost decade. I think that decade really, and I say this when I heard Dr. Manmohan Singh say once in Parliament, that history will judge him much more kindly than the
He
president.
said it at a press conference.
And when he said that, and I look back today, he's 90 plus. I had the honor to work with him as a minister. A man with impeccable credentials, a man who really did so much for this country as finance minister, as prime minister. How can you call that a lost decade? I think that's pure politics.
And you forgot the rights that were, you had the Right to Information Act, for
here's
instance.
what I think. I think India needs a strong growth story, because unless you create wealth, it won't percolate down to the bottom of the pyramid. But at the same time, you have a large section of our country which needs the government support, the helping hand, the social sector, whether it's midday meal, Narega, right to information, right to education. All these rights, I think, were given because this country can't have the drag of half its population not doing as well as the other half. Therefore, when you say the Congress governments, UPA governments were liberal, very open and reformist, it is because unless you create a larger pie, you can't share it with everybody else. So the social sector schemes that we launched those 10 years, I think, are still helping us out. I'm telling you today that when the lockdown happened, when the industries closed down, the workers came back to their villages in many states. It is because of Narega and the employment schemes that we had at that time that people had money in their pockets. So it's wrong to look back and say that before 2014, kuch nahi tha, sab kharab tha. I think that's the wrong way to look at it.
But going forward, and this is a tough year, you're going to have 9 state elections, and then, of course, 2024. I mean, what is the plan? What is the plan of the Congress? You've had a successful Bharat Jodo Yatra.
Yes, I think that.
What was your experience of it?
I happened to be there. I mean, we started off in Kanyakumari.
How many kilometers did you walk?
Not as much as the Yatris did, but I walked, I think, 5 or 6 states. We did whole of Rajasthan, about 500 kilometers. Idea is not about logging the kilometers. The idea was really
Yeah.
to be on the ground, because some of us felt that this country needed a voice, and everyone agrees when I say this that India needs a very strong opposition that can make the government accountable and answerable. Now, this yatra was not a vote-catching exercise, but it certainly had the connect, and I saw it personally also, that when you walk with people, you talk to them, you meet them, you don't have solutions while you're walking, on the road, but the empathy, the compassion, the sharing of concerns, the listening to, as opposed to being talked at, and the mass contact that happened, that I think has really shifted things quite a bit. I don't know how people in government will view it, but to say that this yatra was not, is not going to have any impact, I think that'll be very unfair.
What about going forward? You have very tough elections.
We have elections. Karnataka is coming up now, and we have many.
You're going to see a lot of polarization, a lot more divisiveness.
So I think there is a limit to how much you can polarize, right? So there is a
you
percentage.
You think so?
Yes, I think so. This country, Kaveri, please understand, we are a country of 1.3, 1.4 billion people, with every practicing religion being practiced in this country, and if a majority of this country, which is Hindu, actually was not internally secular, we wouldn't have lasted this long. It's because everyone believes in our constitution, in our history, in our shared common culture. That's what makes us a shining star in the world. So I am very confident that no matter how much you try and polarize or kind of shift the discussion from jobs, education, fuel price, gas price, investment, industry, to other emotional issues, that has a ceiling also. I mean, beyond a certain percentage, you can't do that.
But Sachin, fear has no ceiling, right? And paranoia and creating fear and paranoia usually has no ceiling.
So I think that's when there are societal pressures, right? When you're in government, you have to, well, I know that some people speak a lot, but I think we have to do it from within. No one's going to come and tell us. People around the world are happy to see, all this talk about acrimony and this clashes, and we see some violence in our society. That's not healthy. And like I keep saying, why do we have to go back and talk about people, issues, and individuals that have died 100 years ago, 200 years ago? I mean, they're buried. Let's talk about our future, our children, our grandchildren. What are we going to give for them? So this hatefulness, this sort of negativity also has a shelf life. And I don't think anyone in this country deserves to live in fear. We cannot live in fear, and that's not what our forefathers gave us. They gave us a free country. They gave us a nation that was proud, that was resilient, that was hardworking, that was not developed, but had the potential. We've done a bit in the last 7 decades, but we have to all come together to strive and do next 25 years really can be India's time. But if we get caught up in our own little issues and political differences that will override our larger concerns, then we're not doing justice to the next generation. And I keep saying this, Kaveri, I was lucky that I got a chance to be in parliament when I was 26. And unless I'm 45, unless I give that mentorship and my experiences I share with the younger lot, I keep meeting kids, young people in college, universities, and I tell them everything I can as openly, as honestly as I can, because unless I handhold them and show them the way about what I did was right and what all I did wrong, they must learn from my experience. So if I don't mentor them, then how am I doing justice to becoming an MP at 26?
What did you do that was wrong?
So
we know what you did was right.
My experience is right. So you don't have to go through all the negativity to understand. So that's what older people do. That's what parents do, right? They guide us, they mentor us, they tell us, they make us aware. So I was talking in general. So I tend to talk a lot to younger people across the country and tell them, they have anxiety, they have fear, they're very curious, and very angry, very
There's so much rage,
yes.
simmering
So I
rage.
try to go to campuses, on universities and colleges, and I talk to them. So when you hear a young person, listen to them, he or she will say so many things. But by listening, by giving them sane advice, we're doing a good thing for our society. So young people must enter public life. I think not everybody can become an MP or MLA, but if you're a smart citizen, if you are interested in public policy, and there's so much to contribute, and I keep encouraging people. When I was the president of my party in Rajasthan, we had local body elections, municipal elections, panchayat elections. So there, I decided that 40% of all Congress party tickets will give to people who are below 40. So we had young mayors, young corporators, young pramukhs, pradhans, sarpanches, like 25, 27, 28 boys and girls, and they got elected to leadership positions. Now that grassroots experience, some of them will make it to parliament and assemblies, but unless you give them that openness, that platform to come and contest, how will they come up? If all of us old up, I'm old now, I'm 45. If I keep choking up the avenues for going up, how do I expect young ones to come and take from 20 years from now? I want someone younger, brighter, more smart, more energetic to take my position, whatever little position I have today. So that's the spirit one has to work with. But if you keep squatting on things and keep choking the paths for everybody else, that's, I think, not fair. And like I said, many people like me have got chances to be in public life at a very young age. So it's our job, our responsibility to give the same opportunity to people who are younger than us.
Talking about young people, can we have some questions from young people at the back? If there's some advice that you'd like to ask Sachin? Yes, please. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, sure. Maybe we can have that young person first and then not so young. Please, go ahead. Go ahead, just ask your question, we can hear.
I'm Jayaprakash Gandhi.
Just 1 second, just let that young man ask his question, yeah.
Yes, Mr. Pilot, thank you for a very interesting talk. I'm 24 years old and I've not yet cast a vote in this country, unfortunately. And we pride ourselves as being the world's largest democracy and the lot, but I have a serious trouble trying to understand how to vote. Like, should I worry more about the leader in my constituency or the one that gets elected at the center?
Good
That's
question.
a very good question. That's very good. Can I answer that question?
Yeah.
So here's what I think. A smart and evolved democracy is one where I feel, you should vote for the person you can relate to and the individual that will represent you. Now, maybe it's not the right party. It doesn't matter, because people tend to create large waves of populism by voting for a particular party, and sometimes not so good people get elected, right? So that filter is you. If you can judge and vote for the right person, I think that's the decision you should take. And that's how good people come into assemblies in parliament. If you keep voting for the guy at top, jo niche wala hai, you don't care he or she is, then they won't be answerable to you or accountable to you. And that's, I think, not good, because and then it reduces the quality of the people that you choose in your assemblies in parliament.
Yes, please.
Sir, Jayaprakash Gandhi, you said that in Bharat Joda Yatra, you were about 5 states you walked across and people got their concern. My question to you, anybody spoke about the concern about the education, what they are facing? Anybody came and spoke?
Education.
You'll be surprised, almost everyone.
Oh.
Education, because now everyone is so aware that they don't want just average education. Most people, even in rural parts of India, are looking to send their kids to the best schools possible. A person who's pulling rickshaw in Chennai or Delhi or wherever it is, he or she wants their kids to go to English medium school. So that aspiration has now come into a generation that wants their kids to go to better schools and better colleges. But the sad part is that ones who go to schools and colleges are not getting those jobs. The last 5-7 years, we have had the highest rate of unemployment ever seen in this country. While we're growing at a furious pace, our population, and the educated unemployed are the worst off, because after a few years they become unemployable and they become old and become a drain on society. So every person, most people that I spoke to on the way while we were walking, talked about getting good education, about how higher education is becoming so expensive, about capitation, about the quality of colleges that are getting sanctioned in different states and don't deliver what they're supposed to. So education, frankly, still remains a very, very top priority for most people that I've been interacting with across the states.
Thank you.
A last question. Otherwise, I'll take the liberty of... yeah, sure. No one wants me to ask questions. Yeah.
Mr. Sachin Pilot, can we see you as Chief Minister of Rajasthan in near future? Please come out.
Before I got on stage, I told Kaveri, I said, we'll have a discussion, but we'll try and keep this discussion without any breaking news or headlines or very controversial question answers. So
Thank you for asking that question.
She lived up to her commitment, but obviously she has planted you there to ask the
No,
question.
not at all. This is totally genuine.
But to answer your question, frankly, I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I don't know what will happen in the future, but what I can say is that this election year is very important because the states that go to elections are important North Indian states, Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, etc. And 24, we have Lok Sabha elections, right? So for me and the Congress party, we must win these three crucial North Indian states. And in Rajasthan, sadly, for the last 30 years, we've had 5 years of BJP, 5 years of Congress, right? And that cycle needs to be broken. And it's not that it can't be broken. There are other states where Congress has had governments where we've repeated ourselves. Delhi, we had CM Sheila Dikshit thrice voted back to power. In Assam, we had Tarun Gogoi, late Mr. Gogoi. 3 times he became CM back to back. Haryana, we had 2 governments. Andhra, we had 2 governments. So there's no reason why Rajasthan, we can't have a Congress government again. So we're all hoping to do that. What the party decides to do, what and how to change things, I've had that discussion. So let's wait and see what happens. But our effort will be to win these 3-4 states, important states, because in 24 April, May, we have Lok Sabha elections. And we all know that unless in North India, we are able to comprehensively give the BJP a challenge and overcome their strength in northern states, how do we dislodge the NDA? The NDA, by the way, only got 30 and 40% vote in 2019, despite Pulwama and all that. So 40% vote at the peak of what they thought was their best performance. 67% people voted against the NDA. So the opposition parties and leaders have to come together. We have to form a strong, united opposition. But the Congress has to deliver on the states where we have a one-to-one fight. And that's the reason why winning these states is very, very important for us. Unless we do that, we can't have a formidable challenge in 24 April, which is just a few months away from that.
So you had 2014, which was the Twitter election. 2019 was WhatsApp. What's 2024 going to be? Insta Reels?
I don't know, but I think this real business is really now taking a life of its own. But my fear is that younger people get so engrossed in this real business that they frankly don't watch so many politicians or what they say. They talk about all this, iski shaadi ho gayi, isne ye kar liya, uska wo. So a lot of time is spent on that. And I keep telling my own sons that, take your nose out of the phone sometimes, look at the clean environment, walk around, go play something. So I don't know if it's going to impact elections, but it's impacting our young people for sure. People are getting neck pains and their fingers are getting all sorts of problems. So this change is good, but anything in excess is not nice. So 24 election, I really hope the 24 election is fought on real issues.
Yeah.
It's not fought on some Hindu, Muslim.
Real issues.
Real, not real. So this temple, mosque, mandir, masjid, Hindu, Muslim, India, Pakistan. I think we should have this election on pure issues, pure delivery and governance on jobs, education, sanitation, economic growth, what's happening to our unemployment rates. All those issues really have to be in the forefront for us to make a conscious, clever decision. When we get swayed in by emotions and then we think, chalo bhai aur nahi to isi ko kar do. That's not the way. And for all the young ones at the back, please research, read, listen, talk, and then come up with who you think is the best alternative. And I think we've seen last 8-9 years what was promised and what is delivered. So I think 24 can be an election of change, a positive change, and I hope it's an election that we fight on real issues.
Great. Thank you so much. It was
Thank
such
you.
a pleasure.